Now then, as the Syrian civil war continues, the humanitarian crisis intensifies. Refugees have been flooding over the border into Jordan and other countries for over 2 years now. In Jordan, they now account for 10% of its population, and the country says it needs the world to act. Well, I'm joined now by the Foreign Minister of Jordan, Naaser Judeh. Very good morning to you. I mean, there are just some incredible statistics here, as I read out there. 10 to 11% now of Jordan's population made up by Syrian refugees. How can you possibly cope with that?
Well, we can't. And it's not just about those who fled to Jordan post-crisis, post-March 2011. If you take into account the 700,000 Syrians who were there before the crisis, then you're talking about a total of 1.3 million people. That's more than 20% of the population. You're absolutely right. I mean, we're always commended for doing this on behalf of the international community. But as we shoulder our responsibility, which we've done historically with wave after wave of refugees, we're saying that if we're going to continue doing this on behalf of the international community has to step up to the plate.
And you've been saying that to the United Nations. I mean, what has the response been? Presumably the figures are incredibly high here just to deal with this immediate crisis and the feeding and watering and healing of all these refugees.
Well, look, there's an outpour of goodwill, I have to say. I mean, there are individual countries, international organizations who are operating and cooperating with us on the ground, UNICEF, UNHCR, WFP, you name it. I mean, they're all there. And there have been pledges which have come through, way short of what is needed. I just arrived from New York this morning, and I'm actually on my way to Geneva this afternoon, where we're having a meeting of more than 87 countries as part of the Executive Committee of UNHCR. To really address the needs of countries neighboring Syria. We had a function in New York a couple of days ago with the EU. And I said very, very clearly that while we really appreciate people saying, you know, well done, Jordan, I think this has to be translated into action on the ground. And it's not about pledges anymore. It's about putting words into action.
Let's just jump forward a lot to a long-term solution. Peace and stability in Syria, so the refugees don't just not want to come over the border. Those that are there hopefully want to return to safe and secure homes at some point. How far away do you see that as being? And is this chemical weapons accord, the resolution, is this part of the steps towards that?
Well, let me just say one last thing about the refugees. I mean, we have about 130,000 people in refugee camps, but about 450,000 plus who are in Jordanian towns and cities and urban centers. I mean, really a strain on our already challenged economy, particularly key sectors like energy, water, health, education, and job opportunities. So it's a whole host of challenges that Jordan is facing.
So could have a destabilizing effect ultimately on your own country?
From that point of view. I mean, luckily, we're very fortunate that we don't have the demographic and ethnic and sectarian complexities of other countries. I mean, I think this is a serious source of concern. But you said in the context of refugees, I mean, we are told that there are 4 to 5 million internally displaced persons within Syria, potential refugees. Should something kinetic happen, I mean, you were talking now about 500 to 1,000 people flocking into Jordan every day, but what if you suddenly wake up in the middle of the night and you're told that there are 100, 150,000 at your border? How do you cope? Will we have the infrastructure? I think these are key challenges. Putting that in the context of what you just said, which is the developments in New York and before New York, we have now a resolution 2118, United Nations Security Council resolution 2118. It can just be one other resolution, and it can be in the context of the political solution that we all seek for Syria. It certainly addresses the chemical weapons issue, and we as a downwind country and a contiguous country to Syria are certainly worried about that.
But it is only one step on the road. And what is the Jordanian position at the moment when it comes to Bashar al-Assad? Is there a solution that leaves him in power, in control of at least part of Syria, or is the bottom line ultimately that he still has to go?
The bottom line is what we all agreed on in Geneva on the 30th of June 2012. And there was an operative sentence in that communique that was issued almost a year and 4 or 5 months ago. And that is establishing a transitional governing body with mutual consent and full transfer of executive authority. Now, the agreement between the Russians and the US recently was to call for an international conference that operationalizes this paragraph and implements it, meaning that you negotiate with the regime on the establishment of the transitional governing body, but once that is established, then it's a new ballgame.
But As it stands now, Bashar al-Assad will never accept that. He is, as we've seen, been fighting ferociously for 2.5 years, ultimately using chemical weapons. Is anything that says you have to go ever going to entice him to talk substantively about leaving that country?
Well, if you look at Resolution 2118, it's very, very clear in tackling the issue of chemical weapons, which is a serious issue. And like I said, as a country that neighbors Syria, we've always warned His Majesty King Abdullah II has always, from the beginning of the use of chemical weapons, the potential danger of the use. And it has happened. And we said it was going to be a game changer. And it is a game changer in the fact that it gave birth to a huge diplomatic initiative. Now, you have an agreement between Russia and the United States. And the agreement is on the implementation of Geneva I. And Geneva I means essentially that you have to negotiate a political solution. And the parameters of that are clearly well known.
In between that, and if it ever does happen, as your king talked about, the other crimes continue. You know, Bashar al-Assad still visits this horror upon his people. The killing hasn't stopped. It hasn't even paused. It's accelerated.
The killing has not stopped. The violence has not stopped. And this is why we're saying it should not just be reduced to the question of chemical weapons, dangerous as they are. And there are some cynics out there, and they're absolutely right, who say killing 130,000 people with conventional weapons is okay, but killing 1,000 people with chemical weapons is not. And of course, I mean, killing is killing, and it's all rejected and unacceptable. But it's the political solution that will end the killing. And I think the sooner you have that kick in, the better.
Just lastly, I'd like to get your reaction to, you know, the tentative talks, the contacts that have taken place between the United States, first time in more than 30 years between the United States and Iran. Can this be added into the mix, and we moving towards more diplomacy rather than the threat of force in the region?
I don't know if you can add it into the immediate mix, but it's certainly in the general context. And we've always said that the Iranian nuclear file is best resolved through diplomatic means. And there was an ongoing effort, and I think it will continue in the context of the E3+3, or what the Americans call the P5+1. And these efforts will continue. But you have a first-time, high-level set of contacts between U.S. officials and the Iranians. Cathy Ashton of the European Union has been conducting this effort on behalf of the E3+3 for a good while now. If there is a resolution to the Iranian nuclear file diplomatically, peacefully, it's better for all of us. We've always warned against the danger of yet another escalation in the region. So let's pursue that. It's an opportunity. And I think you now have, I was talking to a friend out there, and I say you have many pots and pans on the stove. And I think some of them are boiling, some are simmering. Let's see what happens.
Very well put, Nasa Judith. Thank you very much, Steve, for coming in to talk to us.
Thank
the
you so
Jordanian
much.
Foreign Minister there on primarily the refugee crisis faced by his country.